Hi everyone. I know it's not exactly tomorrow like I said on Carol's video, but here we are. Hopefully you enjoyed that video that Carol made. It was Greek to me, but I'm sure a lot of what I do here is Greek to her too. So anyway, really appreciate her doing that. More importantly, I appreciate what she does making the interior. So we're back kind of with an update on the RV10, and I've been getting some feedback from many of you of, hey, how about some tips and tricks and things that you do? So that's what I'm going to try and espouse this morning and focus on. So basically, since the last time I updated you, the engine's been completely installed. As you can see here, I've got the baffling kit all finished. By the way, Vance makes a really nice baffling kit. It takes some work, but it fits really well. And I've got that painted. And the engine now is completely wired with all the sensors, including CHT, EGT. I've got the exhaust system partially on. I've just left the mufflers off for now because the exhaust pipes extend underneath the fuselage, and I didn't want them to get in the way when I paint. So those have been left off. But other than that, the engine's pretty much completely wired, not plumbed yet. Waiting, hoses should be arriving this week from Brown & Miller Racing Solutions. So really excited to be getting those here soon. And so you're going to see some things in the video here on the way I do things with wiring. It's a combination of Adel clamps and heat wraps, cable ties. I've had a lot of success, especially with the heat stabilized cable ties that you can buy. And these newer ones that have been on the market for a few years, I really like these Griplock ties for a couple of reasons. First off, you can put them right around your anything steel or engine mount or whatever. They have a rubber lining on them and they're heat resistant. So it's not going to do the typical grind away at the powder coating or the paint and then grind into the engine mount. They are also removable, which is really nice because they're a little on the pricey side. But you put them together and see this little tab here. If you need to make some changes, you just pull down on that tab and they come apart. So once you get them where you want, you just clip them off like we normally do, and they're still removable and reusable. So I really do like those. So no comments on using grip ties in the engine compartment. I feel like we're using the right ones here, and it should not be a problem. Many of you have asked about the fuel flow sensor, and I know in my webinars last week I showed an under-engine solution. I may still try that, but I may also try this one. I've talked to a number of people who've had success with it right up here on top of the engine. I got to get a smaller hose here for this last final 3 inches. And this way, you know, the manufacturer does not want this directly mounted to the engine. So in this way, the hose will carry the weight and allow for any vibration. I will also wrap this with some of the heat barrier tape. I'll show you that picture later because you know, it gets hot up here, but in flight, it's cool, don't forget. And every time I land, I do pop the oil door, and I've made a nice little attachment so the oil door will actually stay open and cool everything up in here. So I know Vans has this mounted directly to the engine in the RV10, and we are seeing failures around 200 to 300 hours. I've replaced quite a few of them. So I really don't want it on the engine, and I want to keep the nominal length between the fuel servo and the spider that's typical of these engines rather than putting it out way out here on the engine mount with some extra length hoses. So we're going to see how that works. I have very high confidence. So while you're looking up here in the engine compartment, you can see a couple of other things. These are the carbon fiber Lord mount, engine mount, rubber mount isolator covers from Jeff Combs at Aerosport Products. I've always used those. They do a nice job. You know, these Lord mounts are expensive anymore. So anything you can do to help protect them from heat and oil and everything else, plus stop some airflow past the Lord mounts. That cooling air is very precious to these engines. So coming around the front here, let's see, we got our trusty, very reliable B&C LX60 alternator here. You know, I've always used the B&C. I've never had an in-flight failure. The last one, I went 2,000 hours with it without a failure. And so here we are back with the LX60, which is their premier one. They're also making a really nice new one that doesn't require an external regulator like this one. It's their, I think, Silver Flight alternator. Either one of these are just really great, and it's what I'd recommend for your primary alternator, especially, you know, with these all glass cockpits anymore. A good, reliable source of electricity with backup batteries like the TCW backup battery is the right way to go on these systems. So got that installed. We're coming around here. If you look down to the bottom, actually have all the cable controls installed now, and I have verified that we have full travel from stop. You can hear that one, to stop. On the mixture, the throttle over here, the same thing. It goes completely stop to stop. And then as these things that I actually do have completed, hopefully you pick up on my use of cross-check, torque seal. Anything out there as you're putting stuff in that's complete, go ahead and, you know, put some kind of marking indicator. While we're down on the bottom of the engine, you can see a couple of mods I like to do here. I always use a quick drain. I like to change the oil every 35 hours. And with this quick drain here on the 0540, you can actually just extend a hose from the lower cowling up to here, clip it on, and drain the oil. And then with the top cowling off, if we come around here to the left side of the engine, then we'll go back there. I think I had something else. You can see I always like using the Airwolf Remote oil filter. Got my trusty Tempest filter on there, which just have always treated our engines well. I love the Tempest oil filter. And, you know, I've always run cooler oil temps than most of the other RV10s. And I think, and while they do say this remote oil filter should be good for about 15 degrees of oil cooling. So for those of you who actually have increased the horsepower on your IO540s with some special ignition timing or high compression pistons, whatever, where you're producing a lot of extra heat in the oil, you might consider this. I do it because it actually also makes it easy to change the oil. I only have to take the top cowling off. I can reach in here, put a little container underneath this, and spin this one off with just the top cowling off. So that's very nice to be able to do that when we're on the road and not reach back where the normal oil filter is here behind the engine, and it just makes a mess. And so there's another tip for you. While we're back here looking at the back of the engine, you can see some of the things require cooling. You can see right back here is the MonkWorks generator that requires cooling through these, I think they're 5/8, 3/4 inch plastic tubing. And then the regulator here for the MonkWorks generator is on the firewall. That also requires cooling air. I also add cooling air for magnetos. It's optional, but I'd highly recommend it. Actually, this side will eventually have a SureFly on it, maybe even before the first flight. I just haven't ordered it yet. And for that reason, I still have to run the ignition wiring. I'm going to do that here probably today. We have a magneto on the other side, which uses the slick start. That's definitely not needed with a SureFly, but it is a nice backup system just in case. So it does help with starting. And Carol's pointing out to something here. The exhaust system, I think we already spoke about.
The tube you put underneath to support the baffling.
Oh yeah, let's here, come right around here. I'll show you. Let's see if I can get a flashlight. So you have to tie your inner cylinder, the underneath cylinder baffles together. Underneath right there, okay? Yeah, you got a good picture of that. You'll see what I do to spread the load as you pull these together is I take a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum tubing, just drill a number 27 hole through it, and that spreads this load across this flange. I've seen these flanges consistently break in a lot of the RVs. Don't forget, these cylinders are moving around quite a bit in flight when it's running, and so you want a little bit of flexibility there. You don't need them really tight, but spread that load rather than just putting a washer underneath the head of that nut on the end of that wire, tube, whatever you use. You can use safety wire even to tie the cylinder baffles together, some 40,000s, but the kit shows using a 632 stainless steel rod, which is the right way to do it. Let's see, that was a good catch. Come back underneath. We'll talk about some sump heaters. I love preheating engines. I think it really makes a difference. And my practice is anytime the outside air temp is less than 50 degrees, I preheat my engine. So, and sometimes I forget to put the timer on, so I like to heat them up really fast. In one of the outlets here for the oil drain, we've got the Anit-splat Aero sump heater from Al and Nemo there. And then if you get down underneath and look up, I also like using the Easy Heat pads. Those work very nice. I've used them on just about all of my aircraft. So that should take care of any cold weather starts. It's really nice. You know, you can see the oil just flows a whole lot better and faster on engine startup. And you don't have to sit there and idle as long to get the oil temperature up when you do that. I think the bane of these Lycoming engines when it comes to sticking valves is too much ground idling time. I think it loads up lead in the push rod guides there, the valve guides. And so, you know, if you can limit those ground idling time, I think you'll have much better results. I know I've done that, and the Thunderbolt I had's gone so far about 1,600 hours without any valve sticking problems. And I think it's a combination of preheat and 35-hour oil changes and just good practice. Okay, moving along to the right-hand side here, a couple of other things I'd mention. The RV10 really, for high altitude, it's not producing much power, and oil temps tend to run cool. I like to see them above 180, 185 all the time. And so I put an inline valve here to be able to turn the air off to the oil cooler. That really makes a difference.
And that was TCW?
Yes, that's a TCW oil cooler valve. Thanks. You can see the other magneto here. And as you're looking back here, let me put some light on it. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but one of the other things I believe in is a fuel pump shroud right around the fuel pump. And we're going to duct some air through this 1-inch tube. Underneath the cylinders here, I put another opening right here in the front baffling for a 1-inch tube to pick up some cooling air for the fuel pump shroud. So,
did you mention the engine ground?
Yeah, on this side, you can see there's provisions. If you can see this white cable here, this ground right here goes from the engine mount. Remember, your engine is isolated from the airframe through these rubber mounts. So you've got to ground the engine so everything works, including spark plugs, magnetos, anything electrical on the engine. So there's a ground right here. There's a tab on this engine mount that Van very astutely welds to the engine mount. Make sure you clean off the powder coat so you get a good ground connection there. And then I just pick up one of the accessory case bolts back here. So it's one ground here. And me always being about backup, okay, I just like having backup systems. I've actually provided a second engine ground here that goes directly to the main ground bus of the aircraft and then ties to this side of the engine case as well. You can see it right there. So do you need two grounds? No, it's a backup. So, you know, I'd rather not wonder if one broke, because if a ground does break or come off there, when you hit your starter, all the current's going to go through anything else that's grounded to the engine, which means cables, sensors, wires, fuel lines, etc. That current has to go somewhere, and it'll fry a lot of stuff. So best to make certain you have an astute, very well-connected ground there. Some other tips and tricks. If we look over here, one of the wear items, you know, I'm always talking about building for maintenance, right? Always annoyed me on the RV10. Everybody likes to come up and rest their hand on the wingtip here. And especially non-pilots at air shows, they come up and they got to feel the paint and push. And our last two RV10s always had cracking here because this big surface area is flexible and you could push on it, just a little bit of weight, and it would bend down and then it would crack the paint. So this time I took the time, you can see in here, quickly grabbed some pieces of rope, made some little bit of turns on them there, put a piece of fiberglass cloth and just some epoxy over top of that. You could use a nice piece of foam in there as well, and maybe just do the whole piece if you wanted and do it the same way. That would work. It just happened the day I did it, I had some epoxy mixed up and there was some rope on the bench. And now you can see I can't push on this. I can push on it, but it doesn't deform. So kind of excited about that. You know, the reason why I use fiberglass and everything in here is I think I've mentioned in prior things, I may put a Starlink mount underneath the wingtip, so I don't want anything metal here in the way of that signal strength. So we move over here to the cowlings. By the way, the cowlings are almost complete. You can see I've got all the skybolt fasteners here connected along each side and along the length there. And the other thing I recommend you do, and we'll show you a picture, I think, of the last airplane completed, which may even be out there on the website already. The inside of the cowling, I just lightly sand it and then take some acetone and mix it in with your West Systems epoxy. Maybe thin it about 30% or so with the acetone, and then just brush it all over the inside of the top and the bottom of the cowling. It will do two things for you. It will keep the cowling much cleaner. You know, that engine's going to drip oil eventually or get stuff on it, and eventually it'll soak into the fiberglass. So this prevents that from happening. And then also, you'll see the picture we're going to show you. It makes this aluminized heat barrier much easier to stick to the fiberglass. So on the lower cowling, we're going to, especially where the exhaust system goes, we'll protect this cowling very, very well with a few pieces of this so the exhaust doesn't burn the cowling. And we'll show you a still picture of that. Well, I got you here. One other tip for those of you who like to pretty up your RV10. One of the things I always think is kind of chintzy, these plastic fuel caps you get in the kit. I know they do work though. They're reliable. They're in the 14 and the 10, the newer fuel tanks. They work really nicely. But if you want to add a nice little touch to them, Newton actually makes a nice substitute with metal locking fuel caps. And they're just a direct fit. So you don't have to worry, wow, I already built my fuel tanks. It's the same manufacturer. They slide in. And then what's really nice is Jeff Combs at Aerosport Products, you can send your cap tops to him, or he also provides these caps and he will engrave them with your, remember one of the things that's required is quantity and type. So 42 gallons, 100 low lead here. Probably could add 91 minimum there, but we'll just leave it 100 low lead because right now that's all the line boys see at the tank. So I want to make certain they know what they're putting in there. So anyway, I don't know. I can't think of any more tips and tricks. Right now, the next, hopefully next few days, the cowling will get finished. The baffling, I know many of you know, I've got to put the seal across the top yet. The neat thing here is that usually takes a lot of work, but on my last RV10, after, I don't know, 1,500 hours, I replaced that baffling, and I just happened to look underneath the bench, and I kept all the pieces that I took off. So I've got patterns for all those, so that should go pretty quickly. I think I might run the engine first before I put that on so it doesn't blow every which way. But we're getting close here. Once I get the cowlings done, and we got some touch-up to do, priming, then we're going to focus on the fuselage. I think I showed you on the last one, the master car door seal has been in. It's supposed to be warm this afternoon. I'm hoping to get it outside. It made me sand those door frames. And then we can focus on the fuselage, ready for paint, and start moving everything else, getting it ready for paint too. So I think we're making progress. It's been long days, a lot of hard work. Hopefully some of those tips and tricks will help those of you who are also building or thinking about it. And for those of you thinking, hey, how'd you do this kind of thing? Please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll try and provide that to you in future videos. Thanks for watching.